Hey 3DMJers, this is Andrea Valdez, and you're listening to the 3D Muscle Journey podcast. This is a bittersweet episode for me as one, it's a great conversation, but two, it'll be my last one as host of this podcast. I'll still be helping to make this show happen and get it out into the world. I'll still have all my other roles within 3DMJ, but we decided to let the guys take it from here so I could continue to focus on other parts of our business. So before we start this one, I just wanted to thank all of you for listening to me for the past 130-something episodes. It's been such an honor to have been in your ears these past 3 years, and I'm beyond grateful for your time, energy, and support. So again, thank you so very much for spending time with me. But anyways, with that out of the way, today I'm talking to Eric Helms and Amanda Rizzo all about the ways that an athlete can handle themselves in order to get the most out of any coaching experience. So we've had an episode back in the day, which discussed what we tangibly expect from our athletes, right? So things like how long they need to have been training, what dieting skills they need, what type of forms and reporting tasks we need to handle, et cetera, et cetera. But today, the theme of this is a bit more about how to be someone who handles instructions, criticisms, and feedback well enough to benefit from them, which is why we have Amanda, our resident mental health counselor and consultant, here to help us out with that conversation. You'll hear about ways to vet the industry before deciding on a coach, what to look for in marketing messages from coaches, how to open your relationship with your chosen fitness professional, how that relationship can evolve, and what signs to look for when you feel like you might be on the fence about when to end that relationship. And on the flip side, we talk almost equally as much to the coaches listening to the podcast, because this partnership is a two-way street, and delivering your message to athletes has a lot to do with what you get in return from them, either in terms of like their physical data being reported or their actual efforts that they put into their athletic achievements. So this episode will obviously be great for coaches and coach people, but you'll also learn a lot from it in terms to like how to take advice from the marketplace, from social media, from your mom, from your girlfriend or boyfriend, from the dude you respect at the gym, or any other person or place where you'd be receiving potentially useful information that could better your life inside or outside of the gym. As usual, if you have feedback or comments on this episode, go to 3dmusclejourney.com or to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/team3dmj and leave it under podcast number 133. Here is How to Be Coached, featuring Eric Helms and Amanda Rizzo. We're here with Amanda Rizzo again. Amanda, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm enjoying watching Eric eat his carrot. For the listeners, it's very large.
That's what she said.
Well, welcome to the show. Okay, so Riz, if it's cool with you, we would like to pick your brain, because it's way larger than ours in this field, about, I guess, if I am a client, if I'm an athlete, if I'm anyone who is, not even seeking the advice, but trying to better themselves, I guess the best way to do that would be, one of the better ways, to get a coach, to hire a professional, to get advice from a friend, right? And that's not always very easy. So, I don't know, like when you're first dealing with a client who might feel like they have some walls up, what would be some indicators that you've seen? And then we'll ask Eric, like if he's working with an athlete, how can you tell that this person is going to need some work in order to hear what I'm putting down?
I think one of the pretty early signs to indicate that is just to assess how open they are. And that will go based on reasons why they came to seek services and their initial motives for seeking the services. What are their goals? What are the intentions with the services? How are they going to utilize it? And if it's to better themselves, if it's to, achieve some sort of goal, I think all of those things play a role in indicating their readiness.
I was just thinking about it as you were talking, like we have a pretty broad audience of folks and this would apply to whether you're a Nick Camelli, like a DPT, or yourself, a therapist, or us coaches, or I remember when we had you on Iron Culture, when we were talking with Corey, and she said back in the day she used to be like a court mandated,
Yeah.
therapist. So like the bad person,
Mm-hmm.
it would be totally different if the person wasn't there of their own volition. Because like if someone is coming to you and saying, "Hey, I want help," not that every single topic is not off limits and everything is good to go, but at the very least they've taken that first step to say, "Hey, I can't do this on my own," or at least I need I need to help see my own blind spots, and I think you can help me do that. But if you've been told by like a judge, or like given an ultimatum by a significant other, or your doctor's like you're gonna die, or your boss is like, "Hey, HR says you need to go to anger management," that's a very different scenario than if
I
you
also
go through
get
our
plenty of
application process.
adolescents and kids come to me forced by their parents.
Yeah, mom and dad.
Like, fix my child.
You mean you can't do
Doesn't
that in a
exactly
day?
work that way.
Yeah.
This one's broken. I want a different one. Or fix it.
Yeah, okay. So luckily for the listeners of our show, no one is making them come to 3D MJ. I would imagine no one is making them see a health, fitness coach, bodybuilding coach, powerlifting coach. But I guess that kind of makes it more complicated, right? Like, so someone has said, "I am seeking you out for services." And so we already have this like +2, you get 2 points for you did this. And it's like how, so we assume that you want this, but then still as a deeper layer, what are other signs that you see, Eric, of like, I know you said you want this, but what I'm telling you, you're not accepting.
Or your behavior is saying otherwise.
Behaviors, yeah, that's a damn good one. And not just like
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
No, I was agreeing, but yeah, I think you can get a lot from just the application sometimes. Like depending on, like sometimes you'll be like, "Hey, I have these goals and this is what I've done, but happy to try whatever," And I think you get a sense of openness from the client initially with how, like typically it's this push and pull when bodybuilders come, especially bodybuilders get coaching. They can't reach their goals, but they have been doing things a certain way, thinking things need to be done a certain way, and are really afraid of letting go of those behaviors. So it's almost like they know what they need to do, or at least they know they need to not do something that they're currently not doing, but they also are very fearful of letting go. And I think that teaches you a lot as a coach about how to approach them. You don't just send them like totally new program, totally new nutrition, evidence-based checklist of this. I think when you have someone who comes to you and they're like a complete soldier, like, "I'll do whatever, I don't care, I have faith in you, you're the best," that's a whole different set of problems, which we'll talk about in a second. But at least they're open and they're willing to do what have you, and trust is established. I guess the problem there is they don't have much trust in themselves,
Yeah.
But to go back to your question, the person who is giving you these signals of this kind of mixed signals of, "Yeah, I need help because I'm here, obviously, but I need to do it in the context of things I'm comfortable with," which is basically what they're saying. You have to kind of slowly help them expand their comfort circle.
Exactly.
Like anyone who's ever had like a house cat move into a new environment, they will do these concentric circles in one room and then go back to hiding wherever they were. And like they go, "Okay, I know for sure my cat carrier is safe. Then I know this corner of this room is safe, and I'll sniff this door. Okay, going back in the cat carrier, hanging out, recharging, and then I go back, and eventually they've explored the whole house." And I think the thing you don't want to do is just grab the cat and throw him in the living room, because then they'll hide for longer and be traumatized, and they'll associate the living room with fear and terror and shit like that. So even though someone doesn't need to eat 2 grams per pound of protein, for example, you don't want to take them all the way down to 1 gram per pound immediately, that kind of thing.
So
yeah, it's a similar process on how we establish attachments to our initial caregivers. If you see children playing out in the playground, especially a toddler, you'll see them, they'll go out and explore, they'll play in the sandbox, and then they'll check back and look at their parents like, okay, they're still there, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they continue playing. Whereas if you just throw them into the park and mommy and daddy are nowhere to be found, they'll be terrorized. Like all of these kids and all of these playthings, like, what do I do? The same thing applies to a bodybuilder or a powerlifter who has practiced these set of behaviors, routines, and whatnot for so long, and they've worked to a certain extent, but they're coming to you and looking for, okay, something else. I would like some help with this. You don't want to, like Eric said, completely change their routine, because it's just so out of their comfort zone. They're not going to follow it. It's just going to be, like I said, with the kids, it's terrorizing. So you slowly want to gradually introduce new elements into their playing field.
Right. You had said about behaviors a couple of minutes ago when you were, I was like, how do you know that they're not bought in, even if they would, like, what would be some behaviors or as examples of like this, you're not doing what, or like you're telling me you're on board, but I can tell as I talk to you that you're not. What are some things that you maybe hear or see as you're with someone?
The first thing that came to mind was someone that's maybe wanting to do a contest prep and every other weekend they're binging, or someone who wants to compete in meet and they're not following protocol. They're not executing all of their lifts on their training program.
Yeah.
Like they're just skipping calves here and there or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not necessary for me, but.
So is it always over time like that? Like you have to watch it play out over time. There's nothing like in an interview, for example, or like on the application that's like a little red flag.
You could screen for it. But I think the relationship, and we can get into this later, the relationship dynamic between the coach and the athlete, some of those elements will pop up and you'll start to notice more with check-ins, or even if they're omitting information. Those things can cue you in.
Which we will have covered in the episode before this about non-conventional nutrition advice that Eric was on. Weird omissions.
Yeah, and
weird omissions.
Or sometimes they're not even on purpose, though. Like
they're just things that kind of stacked up or developed slowly over time. But what was coming to mind as you were saying that, Rizzo, was how often bodybuilders have this very adversarial relationship with their body. So like they kind of are beating themselves into submission. My body hates carbs, all right? I hate my body blank. You know, they like if you listen to their language, they'll say things like, my body hates me, or I can't be, like, it's all this, I've been dealt a bad hand. It doesn't allow me to do what I want. And the way forward is, sledgehammer through the wall kind of approach. And then they come to a coach when they're basically just running out of like the energy required to stay in this locked war with themselves. So it's like they're experiencing burnout, running out of their own motivation, but they know they need someone just to push them a little bit harder. And they really need an entire paradigm shift. So they don't understand that the person they're punishing and beating to death has a voice in them. Like that person's eventually going to be like, hey, I'm not on board with being the victim to this crazy athlete who lives in this body with me. I'm actually a human with needs and desires, and I'm going to act out pretty soon. So I think that first manifests as like weird physical stress symptoms, like water retention, poor sleep, stress, all kinds of stuff that it gets externalized when they're dealing with burnout, and then they just power through it. But eventually, like you said, it starts to have almost these discordant behaviors that are a result of, trying to restrain this part of them that they're externalizing that really just needs a voice. Like I sometimes I want to eat what I want. Sometimes I don't want to do cardio, sometimes I don't want to think about bodybuilding. Right. Sometimes I want to live a normal life. And I think while they think they have to beat that into submission, what they really need is to understand how to integrate that into their lives. And I think that a coach who doesn't understand that just becomes another tool they have in battering that into submission, and eventually the rails fall off and they quit the sport. And a coach who identifies that and starts to try to get them to change their mind is going to have a bit of an uphill battle for a while, and they're going to get pushback from like both voices as they both develop, which is and then it becomes really obvious. You feel like you're dealing with someone who's two very different people, and that's something I've noticed when I have someone who's like, yeah, I've done 3 preps and I'm coming to you for my 4th. It's like, ooh, this is going to be fun. This is 4 years in a row of you crushing yourself. And then it's going to be, how do I talk you into doing what you actually want, which is not prep this year? And the part of you wants that, but the other part of you absolutely doesn't, So I think sometimes it's very obvious, and other times it's more subtle. I think the obvious times are with competitive bodybuilders, because it's like they're at the end of the rope. The less obvious ones are typically the Gen Pop, who don't really know what they want and are kind of trying to buy motivation rather than being at the end of their motivation rope. You know what I mean?
Can you explain that? Buy motivation rather than be at the end of their motivation.
So, for example, someone who has never been able to successfully get in shape, and doesn't have a good habits, doesn't have clear goals, and seeks out motivation because they don't feel like they can generate it themselves, and is essentially not fully in like a motivational phase of commitment. They're kind of still in that information gathering and motivation phase. They're not fully committed to their goals, while the bodybuilder is committed to their goals, overcommitted, crush themselves, pick themselves up, force themselves to the door, and are trying to stay committed in the face of burnout. The other person hasn't quite yet bridged that gap to the phase of commitment and goes, well, maybe I can just hire a coach to make me committed.
Yeah.
And that's where I often see those kind of more subtle things where people are subtly deceptive, don't tell you something, can talk themselves into it, or are in a state of denial. Like, well, yeah, I ate this weekend, but I also did cardio. Like, and you're just kind of wondering, goals, they're not the same. And it's like, well, I'm not actually motivated for these goals. I figured you would motivate me to want to follow my own goals. That's what I mean.
Catch-22.
That's more of like that's like the personal trainer kind of experience, and versus the athlete coach experience.
And when you were saying that earlier, and as far as the somatic symptoms that sometimes show up, and I think that they can show up in both population Gen Pop and bodybuilders, and it correlates with the motivation piece, I think, where okay, tell me what to do. I don't have the confidence in trusting myself. And then there's also a subculture within both of them as far as severing the line and the connection between mind and body. So all of these somatic symptoms are showing up, but there's no connection, or it's difficult to make the correlation between the two of them. Like, our bodies are telling us something. Mm-hmm. And especially with like the competitive bodybuilding side, they tend to like not pay attention to that because competition. But when it gets to the point of doing like 4 preps in 4 years, where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
How often do we hear, and I can think of many times, and where I've even said this, where you get a competitor to now follow a more reasonable approach. It might include, slower diet, higher food, less cardio, more flexibility in their food selection, more flexibility in ranges, diet breaks, etc. And they're making better progress than they ever have, but they don't feel like shit. And you get this panic report where the problem is that it's working, and that they aren't feeling like crap. And I even literally said this. I'm like, I think we're going to hit a stall pretty soon. And like Berto's like, why? Or Lane back in the day is like, why? It's like, well, I don't feel like shit. And they're like, and that's a bad thing. Like, you're further than you were before and you don't feel like shit. I'm like, well, I know what it feels like to have to make this kind of progress. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It felt X bad to get to where I couldn't get with a coach. And now it's, not even near X, but I'm further. So that means something's wrong.
Right. And or I'm not sore enough for after training. Yeah,
this doesn't hurt enough. I'm not I can't be this lean on this high calories and feel lethargic. This must mean that I'm adapting, and therefore next week I'm not going to see scale weight loss. You know,
Yeah.
like the highly motivated athlete, it's kind of like it's always the same answer. If it isn't working, push harder. If it is working, pushing harder was good. You know, like what I was doing was right.
Right.
So it's always kind of the same answer. And then to finally get a different outcome and outside opinion is so discordant with kind of that natural overwork, outwork mentality that it just feels like something's wrong, even though everything's right. Like you feel better and things are working better, but that's a problem. So I think some of it is it's just that mentality, and it is so difficult to reframe that bodybuilder ethos where you're right, you do ignore those symptoms, and or they're seen as like the barrier is the way, like only through pain will I grow, and only through hunger will I get shredded. And it's more
That
like
exact voice, please.
absolutely. Yeah. So I think getting bodybuilders to understand like your body gives you signals. Those signals have value. I mean, to honor them. And yes, there will be times where we'll have to do what we need to do, and those signals will happen. Will give us negative signals because we're doing something that is extreme. But it doesn't mean we ignore them. Ignoring them is not the answer. Accepting them is, which is different.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And I think, and then deciding what to do about them and what's the pros and cons, and knowing that there's going to be something's going to happen, right? So, like for example, right now, I am shredded and I'm like 2 days out, and I'm in really, really good condition, but I'm eating 24 to 2,800 calories a day, just coasting into the show. It feels great, but I'm still highly food focused, and like. That's just something that I have to accept, and I know and have a plan for going into the post-show period, rather than necessarily going, oh, that's a problem, or just ignoring it and be like, I'm just going to follow my diet no matter what, etc., or I'm going to go on this hardcore reverse diet. I think there's a different mentality when you understand that, like you kind of have to honor what the signals you're getting can come out small. There's no that. You know, and accept and not pay respect to the desire that your body is giving you for short-term outcomes. Like right now, I'm not eating more than maintenance because I don't want to get fat before I get on stage. That would be counterproductive. But there will be a response afterwards, and that's okay. That's normal. But I need to understand that versus just kind of turning those switches off and going
On and
right.
off, right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's not easy for you, but I would imagine that it's easier for you, Eric, to reference all of this in your brain because you've been a coach for so long, you've been an athlete, you study this, right? Like you said, there's my body's telling me stuff, but there's also like the things that I know, right? And so I'm trying to, if we continue along this theme that we've kind of gotten into, like if we're talking to someone who is a little masochistic, thinks it has to always feel hard, it's been hard for a lot of years, finally got a coach, and I still feel myself when my coach tells me shit, like I still have a hard time accepting it because I've totally been there. What are some other tools that I as an athlete can do to develop that understanding of myself, or to like, are there thought processes, drills, things they can practice?
I think one of the best things that I think coaches can do, and it's something that we naturally do and doesn't require like training like that Rizzo has, is helping athletes reframe things. Because reframing is just a very natural part of being human, and it's how our parents talk us off, doing things they don't want us to do. It's how we make meaning of things and carry on in the face of tragedy, etc. And I think one of the best things I can do is to try to help a bodybuilder reframe some of their masochism as something that could be positive. And then that actually allows them to then use it in a more positive way instead of a way that beats them down towards burnout. It's so for example, instead of saying, you need to let go of this crazy idea that you're in a war with your body, and you need to stop trying to beat yourself into submission, because if that's the only way they have seeing it, telling them to not do something doesn't give them something to do. So that just elicits fear. Like, okay, so I just stop trying. Like,
right.
what the fuck do you want from me, coach? Like I want to be a bodybuilder. It's supposed to be hard. Like that, I kind of like that. Like I don't get what you're saying, um, and this doesn't work for me. But if I can tell them instead, hey, it only needs to be as hard as it needs to be, and sometimes it will be really hard because I'm going to take you further than you've ever been. You know, you've never had, let's say, stride glutes, but you've worked hard enough to get past stride glutes, just hasn't been effective. So we need that skill, right?
Right.
So the fact that you did that crazy crap that we'll never do again, that might not have value, but the fact that you could do it does. So I need you to keep that ability, like that skill set you have is going to be a huge part of your success down the line, but it needs to be it needs to be a card in our deck, right? So we want to keep this as easy as possible, and it should be as hard as it should be. And I'll help you. I'll let you know, and you tell me when it feels really brutal, and like compare it to how it was. Like, how is this out of 1 to 10? You know, because when you get to an 8 or 9, that's when it starts not being worth it. Like we get other problems in prep that'll cause us issues down the line. So we want to keep this at like a 7 to 8 out of 7 to 8 out of 10 out of your like hardest thing you've ever experienced during this digging phase. If it gets to a 9, let me know, then we'll run a diet break, that kind of thing. So giving them that ability to leverage what we're trying to change, but in a more adaptive way, I think is really critical. And that's something, like I'll use a personal example. In '09, my whole life exploded, and I also got an injury, and I pushed myself for 38 weeks or something like that, not knowing how to get shredded and just forcing it through HIIT and starvation. And it has not been a single time as hard as that was at its hardest. But that allows me to do all this other stuff I'm doing, like travel and go to conferences, et cetera. Because I go, hey, it's never going to be that hard again, you know? And if it is, I can still do it, you know? So that's the kind of thing where that gives me more granularity when I'm feeding back to Berto and thinking about what I need to do versus where I am versus where I need to go. Versus 2011, it was kind of like, it was my first season after that, and it was easy, but I didn't know, like I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't have the same kind of guidance and juxtaposition. So I think reframing one's masochism as an ability, as a requirement, is something that I think can be really useful to know that they can play that card, to know that they have that ability, but then to use that in the context of only when needed for as long as needed, and understanding that if we do play that card, we're going to owe a debt to our body, and we have to repay in some way, whether that's a diet break, a refeed, or needing to have a plan post-show so it doesn't turn into a full blowout, that kind of thing.
Eric, to add on to the reframing and changing the meaning to what we place on things, I would also be inclined to help the client or the athlete to recognize this negative emotion, if you will, a negative emotion, negative behavior, something that you would see as kind of like shooting yourself in the foot towards your goal. I would want to address and identify how that is serving a purpose for that person. Because there's a reason why they're doing it. It's not necessarily to mess themselves up, but in some way it's helping them serve like a sense of control, sense of perfection, to reduce anxiety.
So like, why am I a person that likes this feeling of hardship, is what you're saying?
Maybe.
Okay.
Or maybe they might not like it at all, but it's all they know. It's their comfort zone. So might as well do something that I'm familiar with and know and can recognize what to expect in the aftermath, rather than something completely unknown. That's far more scary.
Yeah. The shit maybe may feel, or you might expect it to be less shitty than the unknown shit that you fear, even though it could actually be way better, for sure. And that's why we see athletes who get stuck in their ways so much. Like if you think about an athlete with a background of disordered eating who's gotten into bodybuilding, and that has been an overall positive change, and they are tracking their macros now, and that prevents them from having diagnosable binge eating disorder, but they're still eating in a very disordered way that could probably be better and more facilitated to them being happy and having a relationship with people and, being able to do the things they want in life. well, we can't just go, you know, let's jettison this tracking behavior because the only thing they know is, oh, I'll go back somewhere I absolutely do not want to be. So, giving them some awareness of why they're doing what they're doing and what options they have, like Rizzo was saying, it gives them the potential that what's behind door number 3 might not be. Well, there is a door number 3. It's not just door number 2 and door number 1, but that door number 3 exists, and then that we could potentially talk about what that looks like, and that, hey, you've developed skills from what you did then to now to be able to navigate this, and I'm here for you, and I got you. But I think all of that kind of tie back to our theme of this podcast requires trust, and it requires that you are, as an athlete or as a client or as a patient, you're open and self-aware enough to be able to communicate that, and not on either end of the spectrum of so stuck in your comfort zone where you're not actually open to change, or just a complete soldier, I'm a blank slate, just take me where I need to go, coach, which we haven't talked about yet, but that's actually a really big problem. The person who you think is the quote unquote ideal coach, which I see a lot of the time, or ideal athlete rather.
Right.
I see this in a lot of the kind of old guard of evidence-based coaches, where they came up in a culture of myth busting the bodybuilding traditions, and it's all about science. So I just want to change everything you're doing. Like, your training needs to be DUP, your protein needs to be lower, your carbs need to be higher, you need to eat, fit your macros, have a Pop-Tart every once in a while, take a refeed, do a diet break, no cheat meals. We don't need to do fasted cardio. And basically, I'm going to blow up your whole world and make you do all this new stuff. And the person who comes to you and goes, I have complete trust, I'll do whatever. Great. Now I feel good because I can tick all these boxes of hashtag evidence-based. And that might be good, right? Like, from a kind of like a quantitative perspective of what's the best approach we know objectively. But it'd be much better to know, like, well, what are your preferences? Like, what works for your lifestyle? Like, did this program actually prevent you from picking up your kid from preschool? Now you made your wife do it because you're such a soldier, and now you're in trouble at home, but you don't tell me because that's not what I'm here for a coach. The coach is just writing my training and doing my nutrition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And also those people who tend to be soldiers are also completely and willfully ignore their own, like, how bad it feels, like
Right. Their own signals.
Yeah, like, yeah, I did hit, and yes, I threw up, but so what? It's like, well, that's not exactly what I expected or knew or wanted, We were, again, because I was just there at the EPC. I can't remember which coach told me this, but we were talking about this, about the problem with being a soldier, and they made a decimal, or they made an error where they hit delete, but one of the numbers didn't get deleted, so they were trying to change 4 sets to 3 sets, 4, right? And you would think any reasonable person would assume it was either 4 or 3, but the person had such of a soldier mentality. They did 34 sets of that exercise. I mean that's an extreme example, but it speaks to kind of like just that attitude where it's like, I'm only here to do what you say. I am your machine. I'm going to please coach, and I don't want to bother you with asking questions or whatever. Like, you're a god to me. And that's not the relationship you want to have. It's not collaborative. You're getting like the entire, like, the key to someone's success is, for especially an online coaching relationship where you don't get to see them unless they send you a video. It's like they hold all the keys towards all the information about themselves, and that being, reliable, open, and you being able to get it in an unbiased way is everything. So if they're sharing with you nothing except yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, that's actually not allowing you to coach them,
Yeah.
even though they think they're being an ideal athlete.
Right. And it only perpetuates their own self-doubt or inability to trust their own intuition or their wants. So it's like, here, you take care of it. I don't know. I don't know what I want. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle myself. So just tell me what to do. That's it.
Yeah.
But what kind of an athlete are you creating, or a client? It makes them dependent on you, and that's not the point.
So, I mean, so far, I think like the couple of main things that I hear is, like, you need to share first off, right? Like, we always say communication or whatever, but it's like chicken or egg, right? You need to at first tell your coach why you're here, what you expect, blah, blah, blah. but at the same time, like I know we at 3D have a very extensive application process. So we know quite a bit. And the shit that like Berto tells me he can tell off of a off of a written application is like outrageous. And then he like you think it doesn't make sense, and he explains to you why and like what these signs are. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like he's just gotten so good at it. So he knows that ahead of time. But I mean, like there's the open communication and telling them all these things. But I think the normal person not almost say off the street, but the normal person in the gym, if they're being coached for their first time, maybe doesn't know exactly what to relay, right? So it's like when you sign up to find a coach, how much information are they asking from you? And if it's not very much, is that a good sign? Which goes back even further to like, how did you find this coach? What do you know about them? I know Eric has some anecdotes about, how their marketing goes, and shit like that. Maybe we can talk a little about that, because I guess that predates even the coaching relationship. Is like, you as an athlete, what are you doing to make sure that this is even a good place to start going, or a good person to start contacting?
Yeah, the initial like in-docking phase, I think, is super important. Like there are some basic things that should be there. Like if they don't have some of the disclaimers in place and the medical health history questionnaires, and I would argue, even though it's not common practice, but should be in 2019, the inclusion of psychological care and knowing that you have someone available to you like that, like an Amanda Rizzo or a Corey Probst.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but if that's not an aspect of it, or at least something they acknowledge, like they say, hey, I do or don't do this, but I know it's important, and that's something we need to be aware of. That should be the kind of in there somewhere. Where you have been and where you want to go should definitely be included. You shouldn't just be sending a PayPal link and getting sent a program. I think it doesn't necessarily need to be an extensive application like ours. It could be a scheduled Skype call. Like it could be qualitative. That might be something where they kind of have that all set up in a qualitative manner with a little bit of paperwork. That's something that we kind of used to do when we first started. We'd call every person before we took them on. That becomes logistically non-feasible at a certain point of scalability to business, and then you kind of do need the application. But there are good coaches who have big businesses, and there's good coaches who have small businesses. So I think either one of those you do want to see. Some type of in-docking process that respects where you've been and where you're going, both physically and emotionally. So if that's they're not it might just be that they don't understand the things we're talking about, which means it's less likely they're a good coach. Because these are things like there's a lot of people who just haven't thought about that or don't understand it, and then they address it. They end up having to address it, but it's more like reactionary, because I didn't see that coming. Shit. Oh, this is a problem for you. Okay, so that's one thing. It puts you on the back foot as a coach. You end up having to be reactionary when you've missed a bunch of things that could have been picked up in that in-docking period. So, and then there's a whole other part about how do you ensure that the way you put yourself out there as a coach gives your clients the right messages so they know how to be coachable. And I think that's something that it's not an issue if you're a therapist. Like you don't have therapists out there doing like transformations. Like here's the 2-year transformation, almost fired, about to get divorced, and now the wife has a job.
Completely violate confidentiality.
Yeah, I would love it. Yeah, Jimmy was assigned mandatory court appointed anger management, and now he got cut off in traffic and smiled and said, "Hey, I'm grateful to be alive." So
ideal point right there.
That'd be amazing. Yeah. So the kind of marketing that we do, or we feel we need to do in the Instagramified, personal training online world, is transformations and highlighting your own success and talking about coaching with your shirt off, perfect pictures, PRs of clients if you're a powerlifter, highlighting your most successful clients and never mentioning your worst, and essentially making yourself a product. rather than understanding that you are inherently a person who's providing a service to people that is probably client oriented. And this is something that I see, they're kind of divorced. Like you will see people who talk a really good game and are probably very good coaches still putting up like transformation 12-week things and basically selling themselves as though they are a shoe or a toaster or some kind of product. But then when you actually work with them, they want you to be a communicative athlete, and you're in charge, and I have a client-centered relationship, and I respect self-determination theory. And the client's just like, so what have you done for me lately? Like,
Yeah, like tell me what to
I'm
do
going to
and why
hire
am
you
I
12
There's a
not?
weeks and I
power
expect it to look
differential
like,
in that.
yeah, like I've come here to get your magic. What is this whole, well, I don't know why you're asking me what I'm feeling. Like, give me your magic. You've shown me 800 pictures of everyone you work with is successful, and you take credit for it and you show it off and you look amazing. So make me amazing. Why are you asking me how I feel? This isn't about me. It's about you. Obviously, those things don't come out of their mouth, but that is they don't know any better. Especially if it's their first time hiring a coach, they don't know what they're expecting. They might feel like, I mean, if you think about it like a dentist, like if you don't know that brushing your teeth or flossing is a thing, and you have a dentist who just shows before and after pictures of bad teeth, good teeth, you're just going to rock up, go to the dentist, and be like, okay, I expect to leave this appointment with great teeth. And they go,
Yeah.
you have 30 years of poor oral care. We need to replace all this, and you need to like deal with gingivitis and start brushing your teeth every day. And you're like, brushing my teeth? Like, hey, I want this. I was on your dentist Instagram thing. Okay. So I think that's something that you need to take a hard look at as yourself as a coach. If you're struggling with the kind of athletes on either end of the spectrum, ones that give you nothing, or the ones that don't know what to give you and are uncomfortable giving it, then that may very well be because you've positioned yourself in a way that doesn't align with your actual coaching ethos. So how do you sell yourself? And that's, I mean, to be totally transparent, that's one of the reasons we started this podcast, because it's difficult in a couple hundred words and with a picture, or in a YouTube environment, at least at the time that we thought would only, watch us for 5 minutes with attention, to get across the complexities that we're talking about. But a podcast with a bunch of coaches talking to each other, I think it gives you kind of that look behind the curtain and helps you see what value a coach can have. So you just need to get creative. We kind of had to break the mold on the medium and figure out what fit us best. And not all mediums are perfectly suited to certain messages. I'm really trying to break the mold of Instagram personally. I think you can. I've been reasonably successful. I mean, I basically made it. I have over 100K now, which means I'm a real important person in life.
Oh, you're an influencer now.
Who has value. I'm an influencer, folks. So I've left behind the plebes, and now someone. It's. I've actually taken my. I'm lying about taking my degrees down. They're behind me. You can obviously see them. I've thrown my degrees in the ground, burned them, and I've just written the word 100K on the wall. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's just to get my value.
Oh yeah, the YouTube plaque.
The YouTube plaque.
I don't know. Yeah, I want an Instagram plaque. I need my blue check. I applied for my blue check. If I get that, then I'm straight up legit.
Then you can die.
I will be immortal forever, but I could die. But I wouldn't be dead because I'd be remembered in the halls of Instagram.
Really quick favor, guys. If you enjoy these shows and have been a listener for quite some time, we would really, really, really appreciate it if you could take the time to give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your preferred podcast app may be. Having lots of ratings and audience feedback makes our show become more visible across multiple platforms, and it supports our mission of helping as many people as we can to be the best athletes, coaches, and lifting enthusiasts that they could possibly be. So if you're not driving and wouldn't be dangerous, pause this thing right now and give us an honest review over on your podcast app, and we would love you even more than we already do. Thanks for taking the time, and we hope you enjoy the show. Rizzo, you said what differential?
A power differential.
Tell me about
there's
that.
A power differential when a coach or someone providing a service is deemed as the end all be all, the know all, the guru, the almighty powerful Oz.
Because they have a blue check, obviously.
Right, they have a blue check. So, and the client is looking at this person and saying, okay, help me. Where's your magic? Like Eric said. And basically there's no collaboration there. There's no say in what the client wants, what the client needs. It's mostly just the service provider saying, okay, this is how you do it. I know best, and follow this. And there's a discrepancy there with how they're presenting themselves, maybe on social media or what other platform. And yet they're getting these clients who are not necessarily following protocol, or they're having difficulties with them. So it's simply a reflection of themselves and their message.
Yeah. I know Jeff has said that, like, after about the first year of our podcast, that the crop of applicants that we get has gone, like, the quality of, not that they're shit quality, but like the people we get, they know, like, there's no real surprises.
The congruence.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
Congruence.
they want to work for us in the ways that we have talked about, the things that we like or whatever. And they, come to us with a certain background. Like, we don't get as many like random people who've never counted their macros before, or have never, like, we don't. So yeah, I think the podcast did a lot for us. And I guess we keep talking a lot about like what coaches can do. But I mean, I guess on the flip side, right, as an athlete, it's like, okay, where did I find this person, right? How do I know about this coaching service? So obviously if I lift weights, I follow weightlifters somewhere, whether that's via podcasts, via Instagram, via Google searches, whatever. And then it's like trying to match up. It's like online dating, right? Like trying to match, like, is this a good fit for me or not? And I guess what's a hard thing to do, right, is because it's like, what you're attracted to sometimes might be what you're already doing, which is the problem that you can't solve, which is, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of touchy, I guess, to realize like, oh man, these people sound great because they agree with all the shit that I'm doing, but I haven't seen results, but I think that they'll get me there, versus like, I haven't seen results. These people make sense. It's a little out of my comfort zone, but they might be best for me. Like, I could see how that's like hard to decipher.
There's a lot to unpack there. So someone has to have the self-awareness that the current things they value that aren't working are the problem, or they're just going to seek out a bigger and better version of the problem they have.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're not an expert, so you may not be able to identify who an actual expert is. And if you're working with someone who was really screwing you over, you don't necessarily know that that's why it wasn't working well. Or you don't know that the book you're reading, or the whatever you were following, or the information you had, et cetera, was whack. You just know, I'm not getting the results I want.
Yeah.
And so then you might just chase the next promise. And I think people get turned around and spit out a lot in the fitness industry because of that. So that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But a big part of what you were saying, Andrea, at least the way I heard it, was if you're an athlete or a client in the market for a coach, you really should be doing your homework, And I get shocked on a day-to-day basis. Some people who take the time to message me and ask me a question, and they have not, like, at all through catalog of work. I mean, we're talking like 2 posts ago on Instagram. I'm not saying go watch, the pyramid videos I made in 2012 necessarily. Although there have been articles and books and all that. Like I do recommend going back and that far. Like, that's what I would do. Like, if I was going to actually invest my time and energy in making a relationship with someone who was going to take me to a goal that I was really passionate about.
Yeah. Shit,
by the time I sent them a message, I would have been stalking them and reading everything they'd done and seeing what they were about for months, And when you don't do that, I think that says a couple things about where your head's at. One, you're either just impulsive, that's probably the 10th person you message that day, and you're just gonna see which responses you get and which ones you like, which fair call. You're window shopping. It's a little disrespectful of my time, but and I probably wouldn't even respond. So I'm not gonna be the person you're window shopping. Or 2, part of the problem is that you don't invest that time. is that you think there's a quick fix. Maybe you did just
Mm-hmm.
message me because there's a picture of my body and I have 100,000 followers, and you're like, oh, this guy probably knows what he's talking about, instead of actually doing homework and figuring out who that person is. So you're chasing shiny objects still, which is very possible, instead of looking for quality or depth or skill, which is the problem. But how can you know that until you identify the problem? So it's easy to say, hey, you need to do your homework, and you absolutely do. But sometimes the reason you need coaching is because your current beliefs and behaviors and lack of impulse control lead you to not doing your homework. Like the coaching point is to do what you'd need to do to get a good coach, and that's kind of a shitty position to be in. So,
And I think that's why you guys just brought it up with the recent starting of the podcast. Well, not recent, but since we started the podcast.
Yeah.
Why our athletes are more congruent to our philosophy, our beliefs, because we put that out there, and that simply just attracts more people that are like-minded, versus a coach that puts the dissonance, like it's not congruent. So you're going to get those types of athletes.
Yeah.
yeah, you're exactly right. It's hard to, like, I get not everyone's a podcast fan, but even if we're basically we blog, we have a podcast, and we have Instagram. That's our primary
YouTube.
way of
Well.
being out there. Yeah. Well, YouTube largely consists of our podcast episodes with each one of the coaches having streaks here and there of doing longer form content.
Right.
Which is often so long form that we convert it to a podcast down the line. So let's be honest. Primarily,
Let's be honest.
if you're someone who likes to read blogs, if you're someone who likes to listen to long form content or podcast discussions, or you like relatively engaging posts on Instagram, you're going to be that's the only way you're going to get a hold of us. And the only place where I really think you could not get a complete feel for us, largely because of the limitations of the medium, is Instagram. But we don't go more than a week without posting a link to a blog post or a podcast on our Instagram.
Right.
So it's pretty damn hard to not stumble across one.
And we put huge thought into our about page, the mission statement you wrote, every
the lengths I go to get some of my Instagram posts to fit, because they're the exact maximum length. Yeah, it's character count. So I'm like, all right, I can change the ands into ampersands. I can cut my commas.
Whoa.
I got to use some contractions.
What did you just say? My ands to what?
Ampersands.
Ampersand.
Is that what that thing is?
Yeah.
I've never heard that word in my life. Wow.
Learn something every podcast.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Now you can
go into
win
and
Jeopardy.
symbols. Yeah, changing numbers to not spelling them out. I've had to go do all of that just to save myself 2 sentences to make sure that I don't leave out any context. So
happy.
Yeah. I know you're not happy about my quality post.
No.
I'm happy about your quality
Ampersand.
posts, but also that there's a word for that thing. I'm like, oh, it's the and sign. That's
The and sign.
I think that's
That works too.
perfectly functional. Yeah. And it's probably just as many syllables. Ampersand's a clumsy word.
Ampersand. What's it called? Yeah, but I think also like you said, just our about page. But the thing is, you talked about it earlier, some people don't even have a website. Is that, when you said they just DM and then I'll send you a PayPal link.
DM, email through Instagram.
Yeah. Okay, so doing the homework, the motivation. Are there any other big questions, Rizzo, that in your experience, other than let's find out their motivation, things that we ask in our podcast, that someone could ask themselves to be am I ready for a coach or not? Because I guess maybe, let me backtrack that. Maybe part of the homework is it training for years on end beforehand? Is it trying on your own for a while? Is it, is it more than just reading shit? I guess is what I'm, is there a lot of emotional work? Is there a lot of physical work in the gym? Is there a lot of dieting practice?
I think it would honestly depend on the individual and where their mental state is at.
Yeah.
It's too generic to say, you have to train X amount of years to be coachable or, to hire a coach. That's very limiting.
Yeah, and that'd be, I guess, different too, depending on the type of coaching service. Or like we do competitive athletes versus like a personal trainer. Like if you go to Gold's Gym, obviously
Yeah.
they don't expect you to have been deadlifting for years on end. Okay.
Yeah. I think it would just be your motivation to hire the coach. What do you want to get out of it? How is it going to benefit you? What is it that you're doing currently that isn't working? So what would be the function of the coach?
Yeah, I think that's super important, is understanding the role of the coach. I think that is something that needs to be clarified more in our field, because like I think people go to therapists to get fixed. I think they go to coaches to get magic programs.
Skinny.
Yeah. They expect people to do products, I think is the problem.
Okay.
And I think actually this ties into kind of a very insidious problem, like the one you struggled with for years and only recently kind of realized, Andrea, if you don't mind me talking about this.
Go ahead.
But like, if you're a super, super coach pleaser, you'll be on board with whatever the coach says, and it'll make that coach think that you get their role, but the motivation and the place of agency isn't actually within the athlete. It's not. They lose sense of what their own goals are, and I think it's really common for us to maybe start with something that is our own goal, or at least meets one of our own needs. But then very quickly the group think, or the coach think, or the idea we have of what it's supposed to be, or how to do it, quote unquote, right, to get acceptance either from the coach or the community or the tribe we're part of, it will take on that life, and it'll look really close to what we think we want, which is almost always like, I want to be happy, I want to blah, 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 or whatever. But it gets divorced from it. Like I'll give you a personal example. So I did the show back in April, right? And I placed second, and I got the judges' feedback. I was training on Sunday doing a photo shoot with Brandon, and I'm training, and one of the judges comes in and just gives me all this really positive feedback and says, but I will tell you one thing, I would have, if that had been a men's physique division, you would have won it, because you're tall, you just have the look, you got a sharp jaw. I think you you did really well. Don't get me wrong. Like, you solid second, and you could make some improvements, and maybe in a different lineup you would have won that. But you were like a shoo-in to be a world champion, like the world championship level as a men's physique competitor. And that's really close to being a bodybuilder. Many of what I'd be doing would be the same, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But and I would say maybe Eric Helms of 2007 or 8 would have jumped all over that and gotten the board shorts. But
right. Win for the sake of winning.
Yeah, and for acceptance, and for acknowledgement, and for feeling like, you just told me how to be part of the tribe, because I've been feeling like an imposter. Like, oh, thank God, I do have a place.
You can make it.
While the me of me now in 2019 was like, no, I know what bodybuilding means to me, and I know what displaying my like I've worked so hard on these quadriceps, and I'm proud of them, and I am a bodybuilder. I don't need to win a bodybuilding show to be part of that. So I was like, and we joked about it, but I basically said I would rather get placed 10th at Worlds and doing what I love than win doing something that I didn't feel represented my values or my
and
my
not
desires.
that physique is wrong, and some people would have taken that and run with it, and that would have. No, I'm being for real. Like some people, the division doesn't matter as much as like, I want to be on stage and feel successful. I don't know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Someone could see the stage as just a means to an end, and it's really about the process, and be totally fine with it. Right. I'm not saying you can't be a bodybuilder in essence or in ethos and then compete in men's physique. Fuck, you can be a bodybuilder in essence and ethos and never compete at all. You can be a bodybuilder in essence and ethos and not have legs. You know what I'm saying?
But it's just that what makes you light up, and I think that's
absolutely
that's a huge.
Yeah, part of my identity as a bodybuilder, as being in the bodybuilding division, or actually in 2 days being in the classic physique division, which is
exciting.
Essentially just bodybuilding. Yeah, that'd be fun. It's all the same poses -4. It's basically just being lazy. I like it, and then getting to do one classic physique pose of choice.
You get new panties.
I do. I get to work really, really hard to get striated glutes, and then be like, and you can't see them. These are my striated glutes. These are
Oh
for me
man,
only.
now we know his true motives.
I know.
Yeah.
No, but you're right, and I have no problem talking about it. That I've like in every sport since I was a child, my coach's opinion matters more than anyone else's, almost
Mm.
ever, more than my
And it's probably because
parents,
you
more
you
than
started as a child. Like that
yes,
was where you got structure. That was where you got reward. That was where you got motivation. I mean, I think it comes from a really good place, and I think it's helped you be a successful athlete. But it's very different when you're learning a
early
sport
20s.
as a child versus when you're coming into a new sport as an adult, and it becomes a part of how you find meaning and satisfy that competitive aspect as an adult. And you really have to figure out on almost like an annual basis, like, what does this mean to me now, and what
Right.
does this mean to me now? And if that gets supplanted by the groupthink or the coach, it can take you in a direction that can be um, not good,
Yeah.
as you know.
Well, and yeah, as I do know. Well, and I found too, or what a big lesson isn't that, like you said, it's not that um, I'm a little more aware now of that, but also like the only coaching, I don't want to say it wasn't even a bad relationship, but it's like every other coaching experience that I've had besides one has been in person, like I really know you. Even when I was coached by Berto, I moved to California to know, which we don't recommend as most 3D athletes do. But
Not necessary.
I think the only um, experience that actually became detrimental to my health was strictly online coaching, and it was done in a way that I didn't feel like it was. Man, I don't want to like. It wasn't a bad experience, but it didn't work for me because the expectation was, let me know when you need me. And to me, I don't want to bother
Mm,
anybody. I want you to think I'm doing just fine over here by myself, like. So it was pretty much well established up front. Andrea, you're my athlete, and the communication is totally up to you. And to me, for whatever reason, I thought that like I'm doing well if I'm not bothering you, and I never have you alter this program you're giving me,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And so then it was like it turned like over years into this like whole where like I really have a lot of things that I should be communicating to my coach, but I didn't really start doing it that way. And so it'd be weird to do that now. And I'm sure he's real busy, and we've never had, and like it would be changing the relationship. And it's just like this whole weird thing. Um, and so what am I trying to say? So I just kept doing shit till I broke myself in a lot of places. I don't know. But I don't think, and a thing I've learned from that, or I've gleaned from it, is that I don't think I'll ever not be coached by someone who's in person with me at least once a month or a few weeks or something, at least.
Yeah, I think that's
And not everybody
exactly
needs that. I just think that
right.
I
It's
do.
individual.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, I think, one of the biggest pieces and important parts of, I want to say online coaching, but obviously there's elements to it in all coaching, is that almost fundamentally with online coaching, um, you can ask for things from the client, but you literally don't even get to see them unless they consent to it. Like it's not like you have that's kind of the same in person. Like they got to show up, but as soon as someone walks through the door, you get all you're not even aware of as a personal trainer,
Yes.
cognitive, like consciously.
Yeah.
You get an idea of how quick are they walking in? Are they in their gym clothes? Or are they rushing in with their in meeting gear? Are they 5 minutes late? Are they early? Are they smiling? Are they not?
Yeah.
Do they avoid eye contact with you? And not that I used to consciously think about all those things, but I would you know what's going on if you're savvy. And with online coaching, yeah, like kind of the default position, especially with the new athlete, is hey, I'm a resource to you here. And I did that good job on the front end where we had maybe that phone call or we had that paperwork or that extensive form in both. And I know what your goals are. I know what I'm writing for you, but okay, here's my best guess at what I think the program should be. What do you think? And then let me know how it goes. kind of thing versus I'm going to take you through this program and I'm going to see how you move. So I think the expectation, the almost implicit expectation with online coaching is that the athlete is self-aware enough to know when they need your help. And even in athletes who are, that's not always true. So and this is a totally different topic than how to be a good client. It's how to be a good coach. Like one thing I gave Berto a little mini gushing message a little while ago is he knows when to ask me shit, like just to check in with me. Like we went to a place, like, because I when I have an emotional crisis, I share with him, and then he knows, okay, I know where he's at. Like he's bouncing between these two questions, and if I haven't heard from him for 48 hours, I'm gonna prod just a little to see where he's at, because I know if he's in that place of fearful, not good enough, driven by I want to get the pro card versus, I met the goals of this season. He's going to do something weird like eat 1,800 calories and do 1,500 steps or 15,000 steps when he probably knows in that other part of him. And we kind of talked about being closer to like 24,000 calories, 2,400 calories and no more than 10,000 steps. Right.
Okay.
and both are going to be subtly different, and they won't they're both in the realm of reasonable, but I want to see where he's at, because, and maybe we go with either one, because it might actually be a better way to kind of solve the current emotional state, and then we can look at the data and he can be objective again. But how can I help this man clear his head when he's in this emotional state of crises to then get him back to a place where he can make more objective decisions?
Right.
And that's something, like, if you just have your weekly check-in and nothing else, the person bounces between all those emotions, and then you just find out afterwards.
Right.
And you can alleviate that with an intermediate athlete by just telling them, here's what you do, and saying, hey, I get you're going to be stressed, but I just want you to follow this plan, and then we'll be able to kind of talk through those emotions in the back end. But that also requires the person to have the self-regulation, control, and trust in you to allow those emotions to happen, but still follow the plan. So it's kind of like, no matter how you dice it, if it's a beginner or intermediate who it's basically like, hey, stick to the plan and then we'll powwow and maybe change it afterwards. Or if it's an advanced athlete who is largely driving the bus and you need to know the appropriate frequency and depth to poke and prod and check in, it's a lot harder to do online, because you have to know when to push and pull. And there is, like I said at the very start of this kind of tirade, there's that implicit understanding that the person has those skills to do that you are a resource in either way, rather than a kind of an ongoing back and forth, physically there, eyes on the body, watching how it moves, watching those and perceiving those emotional states.
Yeah.
I think having the mentality of being okay with not being okay is a huge help for the athlete. That's not to say, like, email your not therapist, your coach, like, oh, is it okay to eat, the sweet potato or whatever it is? But to be honest in your check-ins and give your coach the feedback that your body is telling you, or what your emotions, the emotions that are coming up for you. And then they can step in and guide you, instead of, Andrea, with your experience of, okay, contact me when you need me. And that simply just perpetuates the dependency on the coach. And it doesn't allow you to be honest, simply.
Yeah.
And then you want to perform for them. You want to say, like, I'm okay, I'm good, like, I got this.
Eric, go ahead.
For fear of judgment.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a tough one to walk, because, like, in the athletes, like, I could very easily see, and I have seen and experienced it as a coach and as an athlete, actually, the whole not coach, I got this. Mm-hmm. And then, but as a coach, I want to know what I got this means. Does that mean you are managing a bunch of stress, but you got it? That's different than, I'm not really experiencing much stress from this. This is well within my wheelhouse and habituation, like, there's a big difference between adherence and adherence with monumental effort, right? And And I think sometimes that's a level of detail that either you feel you're supposed to hide, like it's supposed to be hard. Coach doesn't need to know about that. You don't need to hear me bitching. I got this. Like I ain't no punk. Versus what I do, because I have that in me too. Like I was raised as an American male, and I'm a bodybuilder. Like I'll tell Berto, like, fucking crush me, dude. I got this. Like, do what we need to do. Like, you want me to go 2 weeks on 1,200 calories? I got that. But I also tell him, dude, I'm dying. And by the way, I will die for you. I can die. I'm good at dying. Like, like what do they say about zombie mode? Yeah, it's zombie mode, but zombies don't stop, right? So, like I'll let them know that, yeah, this ain't shit for me. But I mean, yeah, but it's shit for me. Like, kind of communicating that I can absolutely do this, but here's what it costs, not from a place of complaining, but from a place of the coach being able to then evaluate. All right, so if he is all right, so he sleeps less, he's not in trouble with any of his significant others or his work yet, but it's taking effort. He does go to the bathroom simply to hide from people talking to him sometimes during conferences. All right. And he's very, very food focused. I mean, he's not going to go off his macros. He's still going to help his students. He's still going to respond to emails. Okay, he's good. But yeah, how long do I want him to be doing this? Because then are we going to make it to August? Or is he going to make it? Or is he going to make it through August? But then in September he'll be 100 kilos in 3 weeks. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
are the wheels going to fall off the train?
Absolutely. There is, like I said earlier, I think it's not a matter of going, I have to do it, so I'm going to ignore these feelings. It's like, I'm aware of these feelings. I can't honor them yet, and I know that will come at a cost. Is that cost worth it? Where will it be, and what do we think it's going to look like? And is that the call we want to make? If not, how do we go further? Like I've heard some coaches say, I don't believe in warm-up shows, And I understand that mentality. Like, hey, you're not in shape. Why are you competing in April? You should compete in July. And it may be that you don't know that athlete's going to make it to July, or that you actually held back on the ropes and they're in pretty solid shape. This is going to be their best, and their goals are not just be at the best or don't compete at all. But it might be like, this is a really good opportunity for us to get on stage looking pretty good, test a peak week. Maybe it'll be a personal best, even though like it's the best combination of factors, but individual factors you've been better at before. Like I'll use myself as an example. Like, why did I compete in April? Well, it worked with my schedule. I looked the best I ever had. I was in a similar shape to 2011, but not as lean as '09. Could I have been better? Absolutely. It allowed me to test a peak week. And then I was going to Italy afterwards anyway, so perfect timing for a diet break. And now we can jump in and dig, and we'll be perfect in July. Some people would be like, well, you just shouldn't have competed in April. You could have just done it in July. Well, then I wouldn't have had a peak week strategy for my first show in July, And what if, like my busy ass schedule or new client, like my life's kind of crazy. Like I normally write things down and do them, but I'm also aware that I don't have complete control. So wouldn't it be awesome to have that one show where I did look better than I ever have, even if it could be objectively better to have on books? Like if I had to stop in April, I still would have been satisfied.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just one random example of where you might do something that may not look like objectively ideal because you are anticipating what costs it might have to have pushed it to where it was ideal. And maybe that, they do their qualifier for Worlds, but never compete in Worlds because they emptied the tank in July, So,
Yeah.
so I think that requires a certain level of communication between coach and athlete that is really important. So yeah, I guess having an internal dialogue that's robust and understanding that you are supposed to have that, but then also cueing your coach in is really important. Like right now, I'm bouncing back and forth between, do I end my season on Saturday or not? And I'm like 80-90% that I'm going to.
Yeah, I thought you were.
Yeah, exactly. 80-90% I am.
You're still fighting, aren't you?
Well, there's a strong voice in me.
I know. Last week he was sure.
That's his process, Andrea.
Dude, I'm not knocking his process. I don't have one at all. I'm all over the place times 10. So.
Yeah. Well, I know that if I'm all over the place, that tells me something. So I know that Well, so here's the thing. So part of me is going, the fact that you're 80, 90% is a problem, because I know that even if you decide on that 10 to 20%, it's going to be very difficult for you to make it another 4 weeks, 4 days even,
Yeah.
because you're going on, you're honoring only part of you. There's a strong part of you that wants the season to be over, but there's also this undying part of you that goes, fuck it, I could get my WNBF Pro card, or some kind of level of, or get the card and not compete as a pro and compete at NGA down the line, or qualify for nationals and go for the IFBB natural pro card. But for some reason, not that I'm unaware of it, it's always been a goal. For the specific reason of wanting to have that kind of more objective extrinsic reward, even though I've achieved all of my intrinsic goals, which are more important to me, there's this hook that prevents me from being 100% done with the season.
Yeah.
And I could make the decision to be 100% done, but then it's the other cost. Well, okay, well, how will I feel about being in the best shape of my life and knowing that if I just eat at maintenance calories, I could just do shows until I get a pro card? And that sounds easy, but it's not really what a big part of me wants.
More importantly, that's not what we preach on this podcast either. Like, it goes against your, like, pro card chasing is something that I don't want to say it, like, it's not like it's against 3D or whatever, but it's like you said, it's the place it comes from is not.
Someone can absolutely chase a pro card. Like, why are you competing in a show at all? It's the question of, does it betray my own my big picture goals?
Right.
And that's the thing. I'm 80 to 90% sure that it does. But if I get on stage and I go, no, I'm willing to accept this cost. I've talked to my wife, I've talked to my coach, and I've thought about it 8 hours a day, to the point where sometimes I don't allow myself to think about it and I do other things.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to figure out where I'm at and what I want. In the end, so long as I'm actually doing what I want from a holistic, emotionally balanced perspective, and I have informed consent, like, yeah, I'm actually going to push myself for a month because it's a time restricted period, doing something that makes me uncomfortable, that part of me is going, I would prefer not to do this, but okay, psychotic athlete, you're going to get these 4 weeks, like, I'll give you that, but here's what I'm getting, here's the compromise I make. So long as everyone who's sitting at the table is in agreement inside of Eric's brain, then I think that's fine, I think the problem is when you've convinced yourself that everyone at the table is in agreement, when in actuality, one person has got a shotgun. And you're like, you agree, right? Like, sure, like, and that's just what I'm making sure is not happening. The psychotic athlete is unarmed, and he is reasonably discussing things with the holistic man that is me. But yeah, there's still definitely a bit of a discussion at the table, because I'm probably not going to diet again for 4 years or something like that. So, but anyway, this is not about whether I'm doing another show in September.
No, but I think it's a good illustration of, like, all the crazy shit that goes into our heads. And not that it's crazy, but I'm saying, like, I have talks.
It's crazy.
If I ever
mental gymnastics.
Yeah, if I'm ever talking about my athletics, especially, it's like, it sounds like that in my head, or to Brandon. Yeah. Poor thing. But you know what I mean? Like, it's to people that aren't athletes, it sounds real crazy, but it's like it fucking matters, Yeah,
it's not unlike someone who is like, you know what, I'm injured, but I'm going to play this last season of my high school or football or college football season, or I'm going to play in the last half of this football game and fake that I don't have a concussion, even though that's not the healthy thing to do. But this might be my last game I ever play, and that's something that, at least with the information I have now, is worth it. I could be wrong. I may look back on this and caution you against it in my 50s. You may be reading my book about how this was a point in my life where I made a mistake, but hey, I reframed it, and now I think that's just what being an athlete and having a career is you have to look at the pros and cons, the informed consent, mitigate risks, and make a decision and do the best you can to honor every part of yourself. And it's not easy, and there's never a clear answer, in my opinion.
Right.
So.
Well, and that's the whole point of having, or for me, one of the hugest benefits I get from coaching is someone that I can talk to about those things. Mm-hmm. But I guess
Actually, it just popped in my head
Go ahead.
how I've done this right, and Berto has really been very helpful in this. Like I could have just been like, hey Berto, I got to figure some shit out. I'll get back to you in a week or whatever. Or like the client who's like, I'm not sure what I want. I'll come back to you in a month or whatever. Or I'm gonna handle this and then we'll talk because my life's crazy. That's of course totally fine. It's sometimes the right option or whatever. But with what happens to your body and mind during prep, I know that decision is end up going to get made for them by their body. Like for example, um, I was very, very frustrated. I wanted to both shut down and never stop my season after the show I did in July, and that discordance creates funky behavior that's not normal to me, right? And by Berto saying, "Hey, just park it at maintenance calories for 3 days and don't make a decision," that allowed me just to have the space to keep both doors open. But if I had been kind of stuck in that emotional state and had not opened up and didn't talk to Berto, didn't talk to my wife, I probably would have had 1 or 2 days where I just went out and started a recovery diet and recovered a little too far to where one of those doors, either in reality or would have or in just in my own brain, would have been closed. And then I'm like, well, I guess I made that decision. I just had a career ending
Season ending
injury. Yeah. Season ending mental injury to where I'm up 10 pounds and it doesn't matter. I'm not going to be in shape to do whatever shows on the horizon.
Right.
Or I'm going to have to actually diet after have maximal diet fatigue and emotional strain. And that is going to make it, the final package worse or a lot harder or like I'm already barely making this decision. Now it's even harder to make. So yeah. I think like Berto did a really good job of just helping me keep the door open. And I did a really good job of giving him insight into where I was at mentally so that he could give me that guidance. Cause I really I was the least objective I've been this whole time. And really not very rational. But self-aware enough to see that because I was bouncing between decisions every other day and going, that's really not me. Like I knew myself well enough to know that the way I was being wasn't my norm. To then seek out that help to get something to hold on to, just to kind of let what it felt like? I felt like I just went in the hold of a ship while there's a storm going on. And the storm is also me. But without a coach, I wouldn't have known that there was a hold in the ship to go into that was safe. Like he'd say, hey, just go down there.
Yeah.
Don't worry. There's only, chicken, rice, and broccoli in that hole. It won't be too bad. And then you'd sit on the storm and be spaghetti hitting you in the face and you'd probably eat it. So, not in the water.
That's
and then all you can do is
such an absurd visual, the whole thing, but I like it.
Yes. It's spaghetti storm where you drown. And then the only thing you can do is not compete in bodybuilding.
Makes
or you go in a
sense.
hole of clean food and then you come out and you can decide whether you want to park that ship in the dock and go get some fish and chips or keep sailing to Shredded Island and pro card.
I'm going to need a photographic representation.
And Indiana Jones and the pro card stone quest. So.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead, Riz.
I think that's just a great example of how you can utilize a coach or a therapist to help you in those times or in times of crisis or whenever. You can use them as just an objective sounding board.
Yeah.
Because Eric, it sounded like Berto basically just presented everything that you were coming to him with, just objectively, showed it to you, and you grounded yourself, you settled down, and then you had the answer within yourself the whole time. You just needed to kind of quiet out all the noise.
Yeah, exactly. And also to be clear that this doesn't necessarily need to be like a coach. My wife is great at that too. Like I won't be able to see all the options because there's two voices talking at the same time or 16. Like for example, I was in the car with her and I was like, well, what if I do, I'm almost positive I'm done. But I won't know until I look at the menu and decide what to order after the show on Saturday. Should I just decide now? Because that's weird. I was like, I don't like that I'm indecisive. What if I just put my foot down right now and the only option, because I can do that with myself, is give someone a shotgun at the table if I think it's in my best interest. And just be like, should I just give the shotgun to the adult right now who says, no, season's done. It's been plenty. You've achieved your accomplishments. And she was like, well, just because the adult has the shotgun doesn't mean that the psychotic athlete won't have regrets that affect you. You know, I was like, that's true, damn it. They're all still me. There's no way around this. And I was bouncing back and forth in the car, and she was like, "Oh, all right, well, let's lay out the pros and cons. Like, so let's say you decide you want to keep competing. Like, it's 4 more weeks. You're going to be okay. You're not going to be happy, but are you okay with being unhappy for 4 weeks to have a shot at something that makes you completely satisfied?" And I was like, "Well, what if I go to Singapore and I lose?" And she was like, "Well, how will you feel about that?" And I was like, "Well, let me think about it." So it was just, it gave me the space to actually reason through, the possibilities, and then think about where I'd been in the past. And like, oh, well, in '09, I went for that pro card fucking 5 times. And when I felt I'd really, really emptied the tank and brought my best physique to 2 shows and still not got the card, I just had to accept, all right, get better in the off season. So if I went to Singapore and I lost, I guess I'd be okay with that. And then I would shut it down. And I'm actually pretty confident about that, unlike everything else. So she was like, all right, so that might be an option. I was like, but I don't want to diet till September. And she was like, well, whoever's talking right now doesn't, you know, so why don't we just see what happens? I was like, all right. So I had to realize that the right decision was being comfortable with not knowing what my decision would be yet. Yeah. So right now I'm actually the happiest I've been during this process, and I'm very, very comfortable with the idea that I'm not going to know what decision I make until I see how I feel after the show. And that's okay. But I wasn't okay with it before, but I couldn't see that because 2 people were talking.
Yeah.
So it's just so yeah, just getting to that level of objectivity requires me to be honest with myself, but more importantly, transparent about that conversation with the coach. And it requires the coach to listen instead of telling me what they would do. I think that's something I struggle with sometimes. Is part of me would be like, well, you're in shape. Like, it's just 4 weeks. Just keep pushing. And then I wouldn't voice that, but that would be a tendency of mine to say that to a certain person who I'd seen work so hard and I know they want it. Or if on the other side of it, if they had really, really crushed themselves, to be like, I really just want you to stop no matter what, and to figure out how to help them get there. So that decision is from them, not supplanted from me, because in that state, they're very vulnerable. When you're in that place of indecision and emotional stress and can't see the forest for the trees, and you're in that storm of spaghetti, that's when you could very easily take on the either accidentally or purposefully, the coach could basically guide you or influence you in one direction. And I think that's really not the role of the coach. The coach is to help you make a decision, but help you make the decision. So that's something I think, that's why it's so important to have someone you trust and to seek out a coach who's not there to get as many pro cards as possible, or who's not there to get, something they can share on IG, but to help you figure out what you care about, and then help you reason through the best decision for you that honors that. And that's really what I felt both my wife and Berto have been doing, which has been awesome.
Awesome. Well, that's I guess what it brought up to me, like as an athlete who's being coached or whatever, is that you can practice that, I guess. That it doesn't necessarily have to be your coach, but like if you maybe practice being more honest with everybody in your life, or, with a lot of people that care about you. Because I'm only good at that with Brandon, now with you guys. But I mean, like naturally there aren't a lot of people that I'm comfortable telling a lot of things to. My default around people outside of my super inner circle is like, I'm fine. Everything's good. I'm fine. We're good. Everybody's happy. But
well, I think that's a reflection of who you trust, right?
Yeah. But I should have been doing that with my coach at the time, which means I didn't. Anyways, we were great. He was great. It's just me. I know. I don't feel like I'm throwing him under the bus because it was a great experience. But,
well, just because, for example, if you don't trust someone, that's not necessarily their fault,
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have we run into clients who have some history of trauma with prior coaches, and we can say and do everything right, but until they feel safe with us, which has much more to do with um, on week by week, us not being the person who traumatized them, not necessarily being something different. That won't change, um, like I'm going to go back to, I used the cat example before, but like my wife used to work in shelters a lot. Like, she'd see a dog who'd been beaten by a man or a woman. And if you're one of those two sexes, which you were just born into, in most cases, uh, you walk into the room and the dog reacts as though you're the abuser. You haven't done anything wrong, and that's not necessarily your fault. And until that dog understands that you're not a threat and you're not the same, it's not going to trust you, And if your, default position has been, I always have a coach, and this is the relationship I have with them, and I just need to be okay, and they need to see that I'm just a soldier. That has almost everything to do with you. And then, like you said, the online format not being conducive to that paradigm being shifted or turned on its head. It's kind of just a lost in translation thing. You're bringing an attitude that could work for a coach who can have eyes on you as a child to an adult coaching relationship online, to where you're more of expected to use them as a resource. And yeah, I don't think that has much to do with, the trust onus being on them. They haven't broken your trust yet.
Right.
Right.
With Riz as a resource here, if I have this problem, because obviously I actually do, but like, what are some ways that I could work on being more trusting of other people?
Well, I would say,
or open to giving them the opportunity to earn my trust. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, because trust is earned. Like, I don't think we should, because we've all seen those people who just go around living in life putting way too much out there,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I've been that person in life sometimes. I guess they're worse qualities to have, but it's also resulted in some things that I regret, and I play my cards a little closer to my chest now. So that there's definitely like another side of that coin, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes, and there is, because I don't think the root of it is trusting people or not. I think it's our desire to be accepted.
Can you explain that?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I would be accepted. So am I going to trust?
Yeah, like you overshare because you want to show them you're authentic and believe me, I'm nice. I'll give you everything. Just accept me, like me. Can I be friends with you? I will clean your socks. What do you need? Yeah.
Or I'm not going to tell you anything because I don't think you're going to accept me, and I think you're going to judge me.
I need to be very careful, watch you, and be perfect, and not actually show you what's really going on here, so that you accept me. And they're both for the same reason, but very different behaviors.
Right. Yin and yang.
Okay. So next question would be, how would I deal with my fear of acceptance?
I would change my meaning regarding what it means to be accepted, or what does the other person need to reflect to earn my trust or to feel accepted, when it's all within yourself. It's how you perceive yourself, and not placing that responsibility on someone else. Like, you're responsible for me feeling accepted.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's not fair. It's not fair to the other person.
Right. Okay. So it's not fair for my coach to... So I shouldn't expect my coach to read...
Take cover, because Rizzo's dropping bombs right now. I'm just saying.
So it's not fair. Again, it brings us all back to the person that's like, I'll do whatever you want, tell me what to do. It's kind of the same thing. Mm-hmm. Because, okay, sweet. So if we could, we talked a lot about what good coaches do, what you should expect from them, blah, blah, blah. Should we maybe talk about when signs, or when it is time, or whatever, to leave this coach? Like, okay, I've seen this through. I don't feel like it's a good fit. I don't know if we should address whether or not we like the markers of what is or isn't, because I think we've kind of done what a good one would do. So therefore, a bad one would be the opposite. Right. But like, how to leave a coach?
How to leave?
Yeah, I think I
Go
think
ahead.
when to leave is when you have tried, know it's something you need to do, but cannot get to a place for either or both parties' fault of trusting the coach.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's true in therapy and with any kind of care-based service relationship. Like if you can't trust the person, and more importantly, you're not or can't work towards trusting the person more. Because I've definitely been in situations where um, the person, like, I'm trying you out and I want you to earn it. Like, this is a marriage and family therapist I'm seeing with my wife, but I don't know if you're going to be good for us, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and hey, this isn't working all good, but do you have any good referrals? Here's what I think might have not clicked well for us, and maybe I should look for,
I would never
doing it in
do
a
that.
professional way.
I think that's an amazing thing to do. I just could not imagine. That's like a hard conversation, is all I'm saying. Like,
Yeah, but for a marriage and family therapist, like if they can't have that conversation, then they're not a good
Yeah.
marriage and family
that's a good
therapist.
point. That's a good point.
Some ethical and legal issues coming up with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's not my job to protect my therapist's feelings.
Yeah.
So so anyway, like I think if you're not moving towards and can't see how to get to a place of trust with who you're working with, almost regardless of everything else, that's not the coach you should be with, at least for now.
Yeah. And trust doesn't mean they've like broken your trust. It just could mean, like you said, like
You
maybe
may have never got there.
you don't
Yeah.
feel like you've opened up to, or you don't feel like you can tell them the truth. You don't,
You
for
don't
whatever
feel
reason.
secure in the relationship.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like the type of conversations that we've given as our personal examples that we've had with coaches or therapists or friends or significant others. If you can't have something resembling that, then they're not really getting the opportunity to coach you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's hard, right? Because, like you said, a lot of people, I'm going to throw a random ass. I would say like 50% of people could go a good year or two if they're new to the sport without even finding out that they would need a conversation like that, right? Because we know like new lifters or someone who's never followed a program, like anything a coach does, it's hard because you're going to probably see success if their sole role is like just to, by you giving me this sheet every week, you're more accountable now. And
It's
it's
just a
progressive.
byproduct.
Yeah, well, I think we use the term coach like way too loosely in our industry. Like people call themselves
Programmer.
macro coaches. Yeah, like sure, if you're a consultant who writes semi-customized programs for people and then gets a little bit of feedback every 8 weeks or whatever, then adjusts it. Or if you have, a Facebook group that all follows a pretty similar program with like a live Q&A every month, like that of course has value. That is, the market has dictated that is helping people and people like that and want it. But you're not a coach. Like, don't, like, no offense, like,
Yeah.
but if you did that for therapy, that's not the same. Like, you can't,
Yeah.
just as an example, not that a coach is a therapist, but the point is there's some parallels with what level of communication you need to have as what I would call a coach. So I think there's nothing wrong with having someone who does your programming or does your nutrition, and
Yeah.
you don't ever feel the need to share with them some of the stuff we're talking about. But just know that the nuances that might impact nutrition and training that have to do with that will never be there, which is
Yeah.
fine, as long as you have the tools to modify your training and nutrition and that person's okay with it. And you tell them like, hey, I had some stuff come up X, Y, and Z, but that's just different, in my opinion. So if you're actually working with a coach, someone who sees it as, they're helping you through life to achieve a specific goal. So whether they are your business coach, they need to know about your emotional state to help you improve your business, or whether they are your bodybuilding coach, they need to know about your emotional state to improve your bodybuilding outcome, or your throws coach, or your whatever. I think that if that piece of understanding where you're at mentally and emotionally and being able to have open dialogue about it and help you get to where you part of you at least knows where you need to go isn't there, then they doing their not letting job or some combination thereof. That's kind of how I would put it. But yeah, I think the reason why that's something that someone can go without for a year, like you said, Andrea, is because people think a coach is someone who just writes a program or gives them macros. So they go a year with this stuff that's greatly affecting their life, like a contest prep, and fitting their entire part of the human experience of nutrition, eating food, into three numbers without any other context. And then they look up a year later and it's really not working. And they don't trust this person because they never needed to get three numbers. And now they've realized this isn't what I need. I actually need a coach. Then yeah, you might go a year with a coach without understanding there's a problem because, hey, you didn't actually have a coach.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
I think
Oh, go ahead, Ruth. Sorry.
it segues into, I guess, the next signal or sign would be the level of collaboration between the coach and the athlete. Like, is the coach considering how the athlete is feeling, what they're presenting with? Is the athlete giving the coach feedback as to what's going on? And is the coach listening? Are they actually listening?
Mm-hmm. So, like, if you as an athlete express, like, hey, I'd really like to do this thing, and they say, maybe we could try that, but here's why I don't recommend it, versus being like, no, we don't do that because... Right.
And that can come from both directions. That can be the example you gave where you give feedback unsolicited. Awesome. Good job. You're being a good athlete. You're trying to build that trust and showing collaboration. And the coach is like, I'm going to use coach in quotes here. And the quote unquote coach is like, what are you doing? I don't need your input. You follow my program. That's time to bounce. Or on the other end of it, the coach gives you all this stuff and you say, finish the program, full stop, and they ask for feedback and you're like, I don't know what you want from me. Like, I'm here to do your program. Like, just tell me what to do.
Right.
That kind of thing. And then you're not open to being coached in regard, and that person may very well be a coach, not a quote unquote coach.
Yeah.
But you're not allowing them to coach you.
Yeah. And what's a good point though is like, you very well just might be someone who thinks they need and want to be coached, but you might be someone who like actually wanted the programming and membership to a Facebook group. Like, it might be too, like it might put too much pressure on you. It might.
I've had that.
Yeah.
I've had that many a time. Like, I've basically had someone who they kind of, they see me as the science guy and science is the answer, and the dude who has shredded clients or whatever, right? And in their mind, that is just a product of good nutrition and training. So when I ask them about their personal life, they're just like, get out of my business. Work for the next 8 weeks. And if it doesn't work, like, what's wrong? Like, you're not, man, Eric Helm's overrated. His shit didn't fix me. I'm like, bitch, I basically just gave you the program straight out of my book because I have no information about you other than your name and an email address.
Yeah.
Like, what do you expect? So I think, that's definitely a thing. And you may be just someone who needs a program. And yeah, if you hire a coach because they're trying to make a living and you offer to pay them $250 a month for something that actually costs $39, their ebook, then that's going to be a bad match,
Yeah.
Shameless plug.
Yeah. Second edition is now out in Spanish as well.
No, but I think that's a good, point to end on. It's like, we've said all this shit about what a good coach does and what we think might help you get the most out of them. But at the end of the day, you might find that this is all just like too much and you just love lifting and the journey that you have internally with it, and you just need a program. Like, whatever. Like, we're not hating on it. That's all we're saying. But,
not everyone needs a coach.
Yeah, but if you do want a coach, like, it takes work on your part too. It's dynamic, right? It takes a lot of time to even settle into starting. Really, it does if it's done well, right? So, yeah. I hope this episode helped. Did y'all have any parting words?
No, I think I would just say a few summaries, like kind of start to finish real quick. Like,
Let's do it.
First off, when you're looking around for a coach, if they are giving you just the transformations and the kind of the look at me or look at my clients, it's possible coach not match their messaging because that's what they think they have to do to attract clients. But it's possible they're not a good coach. But if you see someone who all they're displaying is their coaching ethos, it's a pretty good chance that they at least know that's not the best way to market yourself. So why would you put it out there if it wasn't genuine? I think it's a much higher probability they actually know what they're doing if they can put forth that, collaborative coaching spirit on the way they expose themselves. And then, know what a coach is for, to help you be the best version of yourself. And that's a collaborative, communicative, ongoing, feedback-based process like we've talked about. And then to know if that coaching relationship is successful, you need to be able to trust them. And that can not happen because either they're not open to feedback or you don't give it. So that's where you decide whether it ended up working based on initially getting them and then understanding what the role is and whether that role can be fulfilled or not because of trust. So I think those are the three key pieces, really. Like, coaches make your marketing match your mission. Seek out people who are actually coaches, and then make sure that you know what a coach is supposed to be, and then make sure you can have the trust to actually be coached and carry on my wayward son.
Beautifully said.
There will be peace when you are done.
Yes. Riz, anything to add?
I know what Riz is going to say, and it's probably going to be, I don't know, lay your weary head to rest, I would imagine.
Right. Now what do I say?
Don't you cry no more.
No, I mean, only to tack on to what Eric said, is just be honest with yourself. Whether you're a coach or an athlete, be honest with your motives, your intentions, and follow your bliss,
Hey,
exactly what it is that you want, and others will benefit. Simply put.
Get back in that bomb shelter, folks.
Watch out.
All over the place.
Yes. For those listening on audio, we just got the double revolver from Riz with the pew pew.
The thumbs and the guns. Thumbs and guns.
Hey there, this is Coach Eric Helms. Thanks so much for listening to our show. 3DMJ prides itself on keeping this show, our blog, and our YouTube channel as free and relevant sources of information for our community week after week. We also release additional free video courses as often as possible at 3dmjvault.com. If you'd like to help support our mission and our work, please consider becoming a monthly patron of our endeavors. Go to patreon.com/team3dmj and donate just a couple dollars per month to our cause to help educate and grow the drug-free bodybuilding and powerlifting communities worldwide. You can definitely choose to donate more, and if you do so, we'll send you discount codes for future use on any of our paid products. But any little bit helps, and we appreciate your monthly support in any amount you see fit. So again, you can start assisting the team by going to patreon.com/team3dmj. That's patreon.com/team3dmj. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you in the next show.